We have to defend ourselves. You are the messenger of God. Yet they mock, abuse, and plunder us, and we do nothing. In the baggage of war, we are pathetic. But they are led by greed. We are led by God and you. Now, I know how you hate the sword. But we have to fight them. They have stolen our property. We are taking it to Damascus, right past our own door. I say, by God, get it back! I'm sorry I'm carried away. Please. Fight them.
It is newly revealed by God to his messenger. Fight. But fight in the way of God against those who fight against you. Drive them out of the places where they drove you out, for persecution is worse than slaughter. Fight them until persecution is no more, and religion is for God. But if they stop, let there be no more war. For God never loves the starter of wars. For God never loves the starter of wars. For God never loves the starter of wars. So fight in the way of God against those who fight against you.
God is great!
God is great! God is great!
God is great!
God is great!
These are the disciplines the Prophet puts upon you. You may not harm a woman, a child, or any old person. You may not harm cripples. You may not harm the man that works in the field. You may not cut down trees. Strike only at those who have expelled you, who have stolen your rights and enriched themselves with your possessions.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين مولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. You know, one may ask the question, in the current climate, why do you want to speak about a man who was the embodiment of jihad? Why do you want to speak about a man who quashed and destroyed all the enemies of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? To that we say that these are historical facts, and every nation, every religion, every group of people have the right to remember those who have sacrificed for what they believe in. And no man sacrificed for more than Khalid bin Walid radiyallahu anhu for what we believe in. And it is not our fault that a group of people, because of their political agenda, have made terrorism and jihad synonymous. For jihad is a rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How often do you have to pick up a sword to take the sword out of the hands of madmen? How often and how much we loved the mujahideen of Afghanistan when they fought our war against the Russians, and how much we despise the same word jihad because it impedes our global agenda. And if you say that we should forego jihad because it has been abused by a few, then to that we will say that democracy, freedom and liberty has been the cause of far more deaths in the world than jihad has. Far more. And therefore today I want to speak about a man, a real man. And to appreciate this man, you have to really understand the definition of what a man is. The ulama write, a real man is he who is not only brave, but with bravery he has isabatul rai. He has a deep understanding into the situation. And these two components make a holistic man. And then you have nisfu rajul, half a man. And half a man is he who is brave but he has no brains. And therefore his bravery gets him into trouble and it gets other people into trouble. Or the other half a man is he who has brains but he doesn't have the bottle to carry out the action. And the third is he who has no courage, or nor does he have any brains. And the ulama write, he's not a man at all. And then there are those men who are equivalent to many. Regarding Abu Talha radiallahu anhu, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that Abu Talha on the battlefield, his voice is equivalent to 1,000 men. When Amr ibn As radiallahu anhu wrote a letter to Umar radiallahu anhu and he said, send me 4,000 men. And Umar radiallahu anhu sent him 4,000 men. And at the head of these 4,000 men, he sent 4 men. Zubair, Miqdad, Maslama and Ubadah ibn Samit radiallahu anhu. And he wrote him a letter. He said, I am sending you 4,000 men. And at the head of these 4,000 men, I am sending you 4 men who are, each one of them is equivalent to 1,000. And today I don't want to speak a man who was equivalent to 100 or 1,000 or 100,000, but he was equivalent to 1,000,000. He was Khalid bin Walid. He was born in the house of the greatest enemy of Islam, Walid ibn Mughira. Walid had all the favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but Allah deprived him of the greatest favor, and that was the favor of Islam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Alhamdulillahi ala ni'matil Islam wa kafa biha ni'ma.
A day for a day!
Allah on the
day of
ni'mah of Islam. And if this was the only favor, it would suffice. If you had Islam and you had nothing else, it would suffice. But Walid was given all the other favors. He was known as Rayhana to Quraysh because of his beauty, the flower of Quraysh. He was the richest man from amongst the people of Quraysh. As long as Walid ibn Mughira lived, nobody had the right to feed the mushrikeen hajis. Nobody fed them as long as Walid ibn Mughira lived. And at any one time, he had over 100,000 gold dinars at home. At any one time, and he was known as Wahidul Qawm. As far as his intellect was concerned, there was no man amongst Quraysh who was more intelligent than Walid ibn Mughira. All the planning, all the plotting against the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through Walid ibn Mughira. He was the man who coined the term magician for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Upon occasion, he gathered the people of Quraysh. And he said, "O people of Quraysh, understand that the Arabs from all corners of the Arab Peninsula will come and perform Hajj. And they have heard about Muhammad. And they will ask you about him. So you need to be united and unified regarding your response." And they said, "You tell us, Walid, you are the most intelligent from amongst us. What should we say?" And he said, "No, you tell me." So one of them said that we'll say he's a kahin, he's a sorcerer. And Walid said, "I have sat with sorcerers and Muhammad is no sorcerer." And then he said, then they said, "We'll say he's a poet." And Walid ibn Mughira said, "I know poetry better than anybody else, and I have sat with poets and Muhammad is no poet." And then they said, "We'll say he's a madman." And Walid ibn Mughira said, "Fools, don't you know that madmen cannot articulate what Muhammad says?" And then they said, "We'll say he's a magician. We'll say he's a magician." And he said, "I have sat with magicians and I have seen their magic, and what Muhammad does is not magic, or nor is he a magician." And then they said, "What shall we say?" And Walid said, "Everything that you have proposed, we know it is false. But we will go with the fact that he is a magician. He divides between a husband and a wife, a mother and a daughter, a son and a father." And Walid ibn Mughira was the man who coined the term Sahir for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Walid's hate for the Prophet ﷺ was such that he offered his own son to Abu Talib. He said, Abu Talib, take Ammara. He is the most wisest and the most upright amongst the youngsters of Quraysh. Take him and give us Muhammad and we'll deal with him. And then he said, isn't it right? We give you a man for a man. Fool didn't understand. If they had given the entirety of humanity for my Prophet ﷺ, it still would not have sufficed. It still would not have sufficed. And Abu Talib said, do you think it's fair that I give you my child and you kill him, and I feed and raise your child? And when Walid ibn Mughira passed away, Allah records in the Quran what will be his outcome. Allah mentioned in the Quran, Allah said, ذَرْنِي وَمَنْ خَلَقْتُ وَحِيدًا. Leave me to deal with that one I created by myself. سَأُصْلِهِ سَقَرْ. I will enter him into the blazing fire. And when Walid died, this banner of hate was transferred onto the shoulders of no other than Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, his son. And Khalid belonged to the Bani Makhzuma, and Bani Makhzuma was the warrior tribe from the Quraysh, and no one was a greater warrior than Khalid bin Walid amongst them. He had the ability to hold the sword in both hands and control his horse with his feet. And he was renowned amongst the Bani Makhzuma that nobody could fight Khalid bin Walid. And on the battle of Badr, his brother Walid ibn Walid was captured by the Muslims. And Khalid came and gave 4,000 dirhams ransom. And when Walid ibn Walid reached a place called Zul Halayfa, he was so impressed by the character of the believers that he slipped away and he embraced Islam on the hands of the Prophet ﷺ. And this enraged Khalid bin Walid even more. And when the battle of Uhud came, and this is no exaggeration, that the man who was responsible for the defeat on the battle of Uhud was no other than Khalid bin Walid. The Prophet ﷺ commanded 50 Sahaba under Abdullah ibn Jubayr to stand on the mountain of Uhud. And
the Prophet has seen you. You're not to rope or drag the prisoners. They have roped us. Cut them loose. I said cut them loose. And give them water. And share your food. Equal mouthfuls. And if they walk beside them. Any prisoner who can teach 10 Muslims to read will go free.
It's a big army. 3,000 men, hundreds of horses.
We beat them at Badr.
That was a year ago. They have come to revenge, Badr. Go home and get your swords.
he said, under no circumstances should you descend from the mountain. And the narrations mention that the Prophet ﷺ said, even if you see birds pecking our head. And the battle started. And Khalid bin Walid on 3 occasions tried to attack the Muslims from behind. And upon 3 occasions, the archers repelled him. And slowly the Muslims got the upper hand. And slowly the mushrikeen began to flee from the battlefield. And the archers began to dispute amongst them. Some said the command of the Prophet ﷺ was only until the battle went on. And Abdullah ibn Jubayr pleaded